What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Monty's Minute, the show where you have questions about the video game industry and he has answers. This is episode 9 for November 13th, 2012. I'm Gary Gannon. You're watching Gamebreaker TV. Today's show is brought to you by Storm Legion, Rift's upcoming expansion. If you guys haven't checked it out, make sure to go over to stormlegion.com for more details on that. And we have a great giveaway going on right now. We're giving away 10 copies of Storm Legion in November, so make sure to go over to gamebreaker.tv/giveaway. That's gamebreaker.tv/giveaway to enter to win one of 10 copies of Storm Legion. That includes the original game of Rift as well, so you don't want to miss that. All right, joining me as always is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir?
I am fabulous, Gary. How you doing?
I am doing great. It's back for more episodes of Monty's Minute. I love it. I love learning about the video game industry. Just love learning.
It's a lot of fun. We get remarkably good questions.
We do. We get great questions.
I had a friend in the industry ask me, "Hey, do you guys make those questions up?" I go, "No, these are all straight from listeners. These are not seeded by industry people, so it's awesome."
They are not. All right, so let's see what we got this week. So first up, we've got a two-part question to start the week off. It says, with the market shifting to free-to-play, do you think we'll ever see a free-to-play Rift/WoW that routinely pumps out new content for its players? Second part is if you answer yes. So first I'll ask.
I'll say yes.
Okay, so he goes with yes, goes to part 2 of the question. He says, if you answered yes, turn to page 95. Now, remember those books? Remember those books when you were a kid? It's like,
yeah,
you have those. 3, you can go north, south, east, or west. If you go west, turn to page 112. I love that. Anyway.
Choose your own adventure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know. We're old. All right, so if you answered yes, how do you see them being able to afford such development costs with a payment model where month-to-month profits are inherently volatile? Thanks for taking the time to read this. Have a wonderful week, Nick G.
Yeah, the interesting thing is month-to-month revenues are not volatile. When you've got a game that's established, your revenues are actually fairly predictable. We look at the funnel. So based on so many people showing up at my site, I'm going to lose, X percent who won't even create an account. The ones who create an account, so many people will leave during character creation, so many people leave, in the first section, and then only this percentage of people will actually convert to paying users. And that varies relatively widely by game, but it's consistent within the game. So you'll have games that monetize 5%. I've heard people, although I want to see the data before I truly believe it, saying they get 30% of their player base to monetize. Either way, what they actually find is month over month, that's relatively consistent. So how long does it usually take for them to gather that data? You said it varies greatly from game to game, so they don't know any of this until they actually launch, right? No, we build these awesome financial models, really complex Excel spreadsheets that are completely meaningless. It's a whole pile of everybody's best guess. And, it depends on the game type. So I'll say it depends a little bit on the play cycle, but you get an inkling right away. So we're looking at what we call daily active users, the DAO. Mm-hmm. So what are my daily actives like? What are my daily returns? So somebody played yesterday, how likely are they to come back tomorrow? And then there's a period of time which, again, it can vary, but let's say for sake of argument, 6 to 9 months. Well, what you're doing is you're refining the game. So you look at each of these metrics, and I'm a top-down kind of guy. I look at the top of my funnel and I say, okay, I'm getting how many leads in? If I can increase the number of leads, or if I can stop the drop on step 1, that's going to fall all the way down my funnel, and then you work step by step by step. And you're trying to get more people through. And so, the point about constant improvement, constant content building it comes in two ways. One is I've got to constantly changing the game because that's how I'm getting people in, that's how I'm getting them through. You know, if you look at WoW, how they've made it so much easier to get a mount, and getting a mount's relatively trivial, and you know, mounts that go across your account. When I was a kid, Sonny, you know, you waited to level 40, you got one mount, and that didn't go to any other characters.
No.
That's because they've studied the numbers, and they know that the new sort of group of players that they're pulling through, that's keeping them engaged longer. So, you know, what the mount, back in the old days, part of the reason for needing mounts was things were far apart. And when I saw that, when I was running down the road in WoW, what my head turned to was, they must have a server loading issue where they're trying to separate the users out by distance so that we run into these times where we're not in combat and we're just moving from one place to another, not using a lot of server resources, and then we move on to another server when we cross a boundary. And so, you know, they're using this time where you're running around just to balance server load, which is a perfectly respectable thing to do. They get better at that. They say, okay, we don't need to worry about that so much. Now we want people moving around more because we know that the more they move around, the more of the world they engage in, the more likely they are to stay. We know that if they level up this quickly in this period of time, they're more likely to stick with it. We know that if somebody in a free-to-play game buys, you know, 3 times, they're more likely to buy the 4th, 5th, and 6th time. They're going to be our hardcore customer. So, you know, they're trying to do all sorts of things to get you to do that first purchase. And your first purchase, if it's designed well, always leaves you with a little bit of cash left. Not enough to buy something else, but enough for you to say that, well, geez, I still have a little bit of cash. Well, I'll top it up a bit. And, you know, that's what they have to do to make money in the game business now. But what it does is it gives you constantly improving games, new content, and stuff to play.
All right, next up from David. David says there's a lot of negativity about how Windows 8 is bad for gaming, and it seems to be about Microsoft's change in business model, which appears to align more with the direct Apple has been going. What are your thoughts on this topic? And is Windows 8 truly a catastrophe to be avoided? From David. I've not installed Windows 8 yet. I've looked at it, and I've got to say I'm not against how it looks visually.
Not how it looks visually, and it does some cool stuff, but hardcore users, you know, and a friend of mine is one of the hardest core users who put it on, says, look, you know, I know how to do stuff in Windows. And so what I keep doing is reverting to the old UI because that's where I know everything is.
Right.
And so what Microsoft's doing, I think they have to do. So Microsoft did really well by being really open and letting everybody else make money and innovate and all of that. But what happened to them was they lost control of the experience. So a lot of times the tech support stuff you have to do to keep a Windows box running has nothing to do with what Microsoft did. It's somebody else who wrote, you know, a crappy device driver or has a memory leak or, you know, is using deprecated calls, things that, you know, they shouldn't be using that have high overhead. All of those sorts of things. And so what that does is it makes Windows harder to use. And Microsoft tries every release to sort of tighten things up a little bit and to bring it in. Now, part of the angst over Windows 8, you know, there's two chunks of angst. One is the Microsoft Store and what they're trying to do there. And let's talk about that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the restrictions that they initially put out that they're starting to back away from. The thing about the store is everybody came to a realization that to sell things online, you need to have somebody's credit card. So once Steam got you to buy, once you're hooked up with iTunes, it's so easy to buy more. And if you have that trusted relationship with that consumer, then you're a conduit, and you can offer that service to all sorts of other people, which means, more businesses transacted, and software is what drives Windows. If there's tons of software being sold, then you've got, you're going to make more money. Microsoft's going to make more money. Windows does better. So I think what they're trying to do, and Google realized this with Play, is when they started out, it's, Android's so open, and we're going to let this happen and that happen. What did they end up with? People don't upgrade Android versions because they have to do it for each device they produce. Well, handset manufacturers produce so many devices, and they're used to orphaning them. So they don't think that way, and they don't have that mindset. So finally, Google had to come around and say, okay, look, we're going to put out a store. We're going to manage this, and we're going to start pushing it. You look at Apple, percentage of people using the latest version of the OS is astronomical the day after it comes out. And that's because they really have that nailed down everywhere they do. That's what Microsoft's trying to do with the store. And I think at the end of the day, it hurts some people. It absolutely does. I mean, the people it tends to piss off are the big guys. So people like EA and Activision, who have the ability to create their own store, and people will come to them, they don't like it. They don't like when Apple does it because, each party takes a little piece of the action. The guys it really helps are the smaller developers, the indie developers, and guys like that who say, I have no way to get my game to the consumer.
I don't have a distribution channel. Now they have a distribution channel. And even though they got to pay a percentage, at least they've got a store shelf now that they didn't have before.
And 30% is nothing to be able to accept payments, right? If you get somebody to do credit card processing for you, they're going to take 20-25% to deal with fraud and chargebacks and all this stuff. So, it's not bad. The big guys, I'm sure, will find a way, cut deals. There'll be an ongoing battle with Microsoft. So
what are the big restrictions that they've been talking about that's got the big guys up in arms?
Well,
I've seen guys that, they've been saying this is the worst thing to ever happen to PC gaming, and
they're trying to bring in, so on Xbox, there's something, I forget if they call it the TRCs or the TCRs, there's a checklist. And your game has to do all sorts of things, like you have to have hooks for Xbox Live. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. And so you submit your game to Microsoft, and they check it against the checklist. And if you want to do something different, and this is actually one of the things that's held MMOs off console platforms, is if you want to do things like recurring charges, or you want to sell in-game items and things like that, they didn't have facility for it, and you weren't allowed to do it. So you'd have to go to Microsoft and Sony, and Sony generally was easier on this than Microsoft was from the stories I've heard. You'd have to go and get a variance, and you'd have to get permission to be allowed to do it. So, in the initial rule set, there was stuff like, we're not going to allow mature games, we're not going to allow this, we're not going to allow that. And then somebody got a hold of the lawyer who wrote it and whacked them upside the head and said, okay, now guys, it's good we're moving a little closer to where Apple is and Google is and all of that, but we are not going to be able to impose this. And if we do, we're going to lose some of the biggest money makers that are out there. We're going to lose the energy we have, and that's not going to be a good thing. And so, they've made some changes. I'm sure they're going to make more. There's going to be intense pressure because Microsoft is not happy unless people are selling Windows software.
So what do you think? Do you think 8 is going to be a catastrophe for gamers, or do you think it's all going to work itself out and it'll be not much different?
It'll work itself out. There'll be change, and everybody complains about change. You know what happens every time they change the Facebook UI? Everybody bitches for a week.
This is it's a major UI change, that's for sure. It's a major change in that respect.
And look, my wife used XP until a few months ago, when finally her laptop died.
Shame on the Sharmas. Monty! No. I'm going to blame you for that, sir.
Put her on Windows 7. I don't know how to support. I don't know how to support Windows with XP. I mean, I've been using Mac for years. And people don't like change. but they work through it, and luckily Windows 7's actually performed quite nicely for her. And if I ever end up putting Windows 8 on, I'd have it go straight to desktop mode right away, because that's what she likes. She's not a big fan of change.
All right, next up, this one's in from David. He says, there's been a lot of negative... Oh, no, that's the last one we just did. Doomy22. Doomy22 is next up. He says, hi, I've been looking at having a go at making a server-client MMO-based game for a hobby that will end up with a few friends playing it on it and just having fun. He says, I'm wondering which engine server combination would be best for me to play on that is either free or as a very minimal price. He says he's looked at Unity, Unreal, etc. He's asked questions online and no one seems to answer clearly. Do you have any insight from Doomy?
Yeah, so it depends on what you need that back-end server to do. So there's a few things like Photon, there's Fox Server, Parse is coming out with some stuff mainly on the mobile side. I'll send you an intro to somebody else I know who's doing something in beta, so they'll let you use it for free for an extended period of time. There's lots of things out there. The question is what sort of back-end features do you need? Do you just need a messaging system so that people connect up to the back-end server and it handles message passing between all of the clients? Take a look at those things. A lot of them have fairly good business models where, hey, unless you're making so much money, you don't have to pay, or so many users, or here's a way to do it for free. Take a look at those things, Doomy, and see what fits. Client side, it really depends on what you are comfortable programming it. Unity is awesome. It's easy. There's lots of stuff around it. The asset store has a lot of value. UDK has a lot of stuff bundled in. It's not quite as flexible out of the box as Unity because they want to drive you to buying the an Unreal license. But it's a really nice package, very powerful package. Take a look at those and look at what you're comfortable programming in, and work with any of those.
All right, next up, this one from Dular. He says, thanks for answering my questions. Looks like the term I was looking for was regression testing. So this harkens back to an old question from Dular. It says, with gamers' demand for new content, do game developers test the new content mechanics with older content? Once they discover a problem with older content, how much time and money would they spend on fixing the older content? Example, Blizzard broke fishing tournaments by allowing players to jump from server to server, resulting in instant fishing tournament wins. While Blizzard suspended the fishing tournament, I just don't see them spending the time or money to fix the fishing tournament. The largest fishing tournaments, by the way.
Some of those things I never got into. The interesting thing, so in terms of regression testing usually refers to a technical test or a smoke test. Does this interfere with this on, old version of the OS, other code we have, all that sort of stuff? And yep, they do that, and that gives you the the smoke test or the functional level certification that it's not going to break anything. On the fishing tournament side, what you really see is the problem that game developers always have is players are fiendishly clever. And so, who as a developer was sitting there going, you know what, if we do this fishing tournament, people are going to start hopping from server to server. And somebody might have said that, and I'm sure in the meeting somebody else would have said, yeah, but it'd be one or two guys. That's okay. And then some schmuck posts it on the forum and everybody's doing it, and they go and they wreck the feature. At which point in time, what's happening is the game designers and the producers are looking at it and they're going, okay, what's this doing to our player base? How many people are doing it? Who do we affect if we shut this down? And so they look to mitigate it, so they could hot patch it or something else, or they run around and they shut it down and say that, all right, we're not we're not going to do this. And we'll come back to it when we have time. And I'm sure there's some dev at Blizzard who likes fishing, who's, likes doing fishing tournaments and all of that.
Unfortunately, it's a numbers game, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's a numbers game. It's where does this stand on the priority list of how, like you said, I think probably the first one be like, how many people does this affect? And that really dictates a lot to whether they're going to spend time, money, and effort on fixing something like that. So
exactly.
When the fishing tournament $1 million prize comes out next year, they'll probably fix it. If that ever happens, turn fishing tournaments into an esport. Maybe that'll happen. Who knows?
Well, if they found that what it did was it made 10% of players happy, and it was low load on the server, then awesome. This is a great way to get more players per instance. Let's do it. If they found it was stressing the servers, a small percentage of players were using it, and to fix it was going to take 3 person weeks of coding, forget it. Never going to see it again.
All right, last up this week from Christopher Adams. He says, I have a question. In the state of Tennessee, there are consumer protection laws that prohibit anyone from requiring money from a Tennessee resident to participate in tournaments and contests to win prizes. Yet we see things like Call of Duty Elite where you must subscribe in order to win prizes. How are these gaming companies getting around these laws? God,
yeah.
This sort of ties into the every time we're doing a Rift giveaway. Why is it US only? Because if you guys had any, I'm gonna let Monty go, but if you guys had any idea about the legal around,
you're not allowed to in Quebec. They'd come down a ton of bricks if you made it available in Quebec. Every jurisdiction has these sorts of restrictions, and the biggest pain in the ass is they're slightly different everywhere.
Yes.
And so it's, and I'm not a lawyer, and Call of Duty actually pulled that whole thing because it was bad marketing. But invariably what you find in this is when Activision does something like this, they've had 30 lawyers look at it. So there's a thing that is that essentially constitutes a lottery, that you've got a chance to win or there's a giveaway. In these things, a lot of times it's in really fine print or somebody mumbles about it, in the voiceover. There's a way to get an entry without paying. So you have to write them, and you write them a letter at this address, and they'll send you an entry for each letter you send them.
It's all very specific, minute verbiage. Like we can't call the Rift giveaway that we're giving. We cannot call that a contest. We have to call it a giveaway.
Right.
So down to just that one word makes all the difference whether we can actually even do that or not.
So companies are constantly trying to find ways, and the government's trying to protect you from people who are doing a fake lottery to suck you in and give them information or swindle you in other ways. It used to be in the 70s, door-to-door salesmen would use those sorts of things. Look, you have a week to decide if you want this vacuum cleaner. You don't like it, you still get the entry to win $1 million. Well, you find out it's almost impossible to get the damn vacuum cleaner. Stuff like that. So that's what the government's trying to stop. For the most part, if you see a company who's publicly traded like Activision or EA or any of those guys doing it, 900 lawyers have signed off on exactly what's happening. And it's 901. Yeah, it's legal, and it's going to work that way, and the marketing guys are just sitting there ready to kill themselves because the lawyers have made it that much harder to get another person to play the game.
It is true. It makes my head hurt. For a simple giveaway that we do on Gamebreaker, it makes my head hurt. I hate dealing with it. Monty Sharma, follow him on Twitter at Monster27. That's MONTSTER27. And if you have a question for Monty, make sure to send it to not submit. I always say submit, but it's not. It's Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. If you have a question you want to hear on the show, send it into Monty at Gamebreaker TV. You can follow me on Twitter at Gary Gannon, and of course you can follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. We do the show every single week. Keep it locked and dialed in right here to Monty's Minute. You got questions about the industry, he's got answers for you. Monty, another great week. Learned so much.
Yeah. All sorts of fun, Gary.
We'll see you guys next week.